Hello and welcome back to the Deeper Pulse and the Culture series. Today we're going to dig into part 2 of my conversation with the co-founders of the #IGOTOUT movement. If you missed last week's episode, I highly recommend that you circle back because we're going to be picking up right where we left off. The stories and opinions shared here are based on personal experience and are not intended to malign any group, individual, or organization. This episode may be triggering to cult survivors or anyone who has experience in high-demand groups or emotionally coercive relationships. Please listen with care. Okay, before we dive back into the rest of my conversation with Lisa and Gerette, I want to speak for just a moment on this issue of survivorship. In the New Age wellness world where I spent nearly 2 decades, it was considered very low vibe to, quote, focus on your wounds. To say things like, that was wrong what happened to me. Naming negative emotions or telling stories about the past was often seen as complaining, and I felt genuinely discouraged from expressing sorrow, resentment, and outrage. Because the core of the teaching was that, well, if I'm just a spiritual being who is having a human experience, then my pain itself is just a transitory inconvenience. And taking the high road means transcending it, paying it no mind. Every consequence that I experienced in life was supposedly as the universe had perfectly intended it. Therefore, there was no such thing as a victim or a perpetrator. And this whole idea of being a survivor of something was just a short-sighted misunderstanding. I'm just missing the big picture, playing the victim card, or getting mired in the drama. The point is, never point fingers and do the inner work to become free from internal resistance. It took a lot of courage for me to join a community of survivors when I've long been taught that survivorship itself is shameful. And I guess I'm naming it here because I find it rather interesting and convenient for those in power, the way that victim shaming keeps us from sharing our stories with one another. This in and of itself is systemic cult conditioning at work. If we teach people to retreat into shame and silence when they feel hurt, scared, and vulnerable, we convince them to suck it up, look on the bright side, and never ever be a victim no matter what, it sure as hell is way easier to control them. And a bit of a side note here, one of the things that pisses me off the most about all of this in the wellness world is just how many good and helpful tools and practices have been co-opted, commercialized, and weaponized by marketers, gurus, and online influencers. It's honestly something I'm still grieving to this day, just how much medicine has been laced with manipulation. So much of what I loved partaking in now leaves a bad taste in my mouth. It is such a mindfuck to critique something that at one time transformed my life for the better. Someone recently asked me if I have concerns around creating an anti-cult cult. And to be perfectly honest with you, I've been obsessing about this question endlessly, and long before I launched the Culture series. Fear of losing myself in leadership, of creating something culty or even remotely cult adjacent, this is what's kept me from building a viable business, publishing more than one book, and from stepping both feet into social activism. I'm so terrified of perpetuating the harm that I've experienced that it kept me paralyzed for years. And I likewise have to catch myself when I'm asked direct questions because my learned tendency when challenged is to fawn. It's taking practice for me to continually assert myself. But here's what I'm starting to now see. There is really no way for us to reimagine and recreate something different without deconstructing our experiences. When I meet people like Lisa and Gerette, I realize in these conversations that we have to do our awkward learning out loud and together, in plain sight, because silence in the face of these systemic issues is the cult-like complacency that we're working to change. You know, I don't have any idea how to do any of this different, but I know for sure that it's possible. As I've said so many times ad nauseum, these dynamics live inside of us. And it's human nature for us to attach and bind ourselves to one another. And so it stands to reason that in communities of recovery, we will face the very same challenges as anywhere else. And in fact, in some upcoming episodes, you're going to be hearing from some survivors who've experienced cult dynamics while in healing and recovery spaces, which really underscores the point of all of this. It's not about this cult, that cult, wellness versus anti-wellness, none of that. Harm and helpfulness are never mutually exclusive. They often walk arm in arm, hand in hand. We can't do any of this differently unless we're willing to talk about how we've fucked it up. Have honest and humble conversations about the ways that we've been victimized and the way that we ourselves have perpetuated these dynamics. Which is why this conversation has been so meaningful to me. Because while it might take some courage to step forward with an answer, it takes far more bravery to step forward while smack dab in the middle of the question. Dehumanization is at the heart of cult dynamics, and shame is the tool that is most often used to silence and control. When we create spaces where people who are overlooked feel safe to share their stories, when we invite them to be human, we're not creating anti-cult cults. We're restoring balance in a broken system. We're defying a social narrative that has long insisted that the people who most deserve grace are those at the top. Of course, there will be those who attach their identity to pushing against something. And I honestly feel like developmentally and emotionally, there's a time and a place for that. But in most cases, when survivors speak out and perpetrators feel victimized by the truth that's revealed, it's altogether different. It's tempting to draw a false equivalency. Survivors' stories must be centered and amplified, not as a replacement for power over dynamics, but because these stories contain clues that will help us to piece together something altogether different. In today's conversation, we speak about some of this, about how a lineage of cultish influence has shaped modern-day wellness, about creativity. What is it really? And how does critical thinking and deconstruction help us to move forward? We talk trigger warnings and how to ease oneself into the cult recovery movement, one step at a time. Once again, it's a lively and informed discussion, and I'm so thrilled to be able to share it with you. So let's pick up right where we left off last week, when Gerette was speaking about exiting a therapy-based cult that she was a part of for 18 years, and the relief that she feels on the other side of it.
That's the biggest relief for me in getting out of my 18-year odyssey. It's like, oh, I just get to be human? Yeehaw, what fun. You know? Oh.
Yes. Have authentic connection and conversations.
I don't have to recruit anybody. I don't have to convince everybody I speak to that I have this special thing that I think will help you too. You know, I just get to be real.
Which includes having a sense of confusion and discomfort. And like, I think about one of the things that really resonated with me in reading your book, Gerette, was when you were speaking about, you know, your leader was the authority as it works in these environments. And it seemed to me, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so tell me if this sounds right. It seemed to me that you would have a human experience, and then it would be reframed as a pathology that you needed to heal. When it was just you having a human experience. Does that sound right?
Candice. Is that familiar to you, my dear?
It's so familiar, which is why I was able to state it so clearly. Very familiar. And this idea of issues, having issues that we need to work on, pathology, whatever you want to call it, and that there's this sense of being unfinished and not enough.
Ever. Never finished. Ever.
Mm-hmm.
Layers of
more.
the onion, always peeling, never a core. That's a huge red flag. You want to talk about red flag. And you've done a great job in this series talking about the red flags. But this idea that you can never graduate, never go beyond, always, renewing commitments. That's kind of goes. I want to pick up a thread with the Guru Maharaji stuff just because it's on my radar. Entering into the cult recovery space on Instagram, I'm seeing a couple accounts that are exposing Guru Maharaji, who was my first guru that I actually was initiated into as a child. And they're doing all this work to expose him because he's still working and he's rebranded as Prem Rawat. I'm like seeing this stuff that is so familiar to me. And when you have these influences that have been running a thread through your whole life and seeing these cult leaders still in operation, it was amazing to hear Damuna's story about the Hare Krishnas. They're still at work, right?
Yeah.
I guess what the main thing is, I wanted to give a shout out to the people that are doing this because they're alone as far as I can tell. I've done some searching with hashtags and things like that to see if anybody else is talking about this particular guru. But when you look at what we're trying to do with I Got Out, it's not about calling out specific people, right? And I will tell you right now, in my phase of finding my voice and speaking out, is I'm feeling the call to name them, to name these influences that have woven their way into the cultiverse, that the people who are actually influential now, they're standing on the backs of these other people, gurus, who have been doing this thing, right? A little bit culty did maybe last year something about Bentino what's his name? Bentino Massaro, I think. And that guy is able to do what he's doing because he's regurgitating the same crap that all these other guys did. So this idea, this exploration into, is the wellness industry a cult, which, I so appreciate you taking that question. It's one that Laura Tucker of Free Your Inner Guru, she was exploring for a while, and she's shifted her attention to other things. So I feel like this thread that you're exploring on this podcast right now with this series, it's a deeply rooted fungus.
I wouldn't call it a fungus.
It's a mycelial network.
Like a fungus is such a good thing. Let's call it a poison.
No. I'm watching this show, The Last of Us.
Oh, right. That's like where there's like a pandemic
from
from
a fungus
or something. I haven't watched it, but I heard. Yeah, right. She's like, all right. Well, what's interesting about what you're saying, and I even feel a little bit nervous talking about it, and this is the moment, I suppose. I feel that you really gave language to a concern that I have around the wellness culture and the way that when we focus our attention so much on the personality of the teacher and whether or not they're a narcissist or not, or do they have the characteristics of a cult leader, we miss what you just described. We miss that, like, I know of teachers that I have respect for, that I've actually learned from, that when they say certain things, they don't understand what they're really saying. because they don't understand the history that precedes them and the message they're actually sending and where it's actually leading people, because they don't have this awareness around what cult dynamics really are, not cult personalities. And so they think that I don't know if they think that they're immune. I don't know what they think, but there's this sense that I get that, well, I'm not that kind of person, therefore what I'm doing isn't problematic.
Yes.
And I have like you can feel my energy. I get really charged around this because it's difficult for me, because some of the people that I'm close to, I have this dissonance around where I'm like, oof, like when you know what I know, and not to say that I'm smarter than, but however, I'm educated around these dynamics in ways that I wasn't. And I look at things that I did and said, and I was standing on the backs of some of those people you're speaking of and regurgitating things that are very problematic, and you don't really see that until you understand these dynamics. So I appreciate you naming that so much. It gives me permission to say what I just said. I wasn't sure how to articulate it, right? I wasn't sure how to name that and say, like, I love you and what you're doing is a problem, which is what I've been attempting to say to folks, but I wasn't sure how to frame it, and you gave me some language around that.
What you're identifying there, Candice, I think is perhaps the touchiest of the touchy subjects in the wellness, and really I would also include this in the realm of spiritual leaders of any kind. And what's coming up for me, like I can feel, even though we're all on, Zoom here, I can feel the energy kind of crackling through the wavelines here, because it touches on one of my most important topics in the cultiverse world, which is we can't really look at cult dynamics and the impact of cultic involvement without also really dealing with what is healthy leadership and how can we create accountability within our own selves. And I'm speaking to myself right now, because I do know that I'm a vulnerable human being because I did write a book, and B, I facilitate these classes, the Writing to Reckon classes, and C, I am a leader in the IGOTOUT.org movement. Like I have a leadership role. And I think that, that whenever we are speaking, whenever we are standing in any way with a level of authority, of knowing something, if we can find the ways to keep returning to an openness to authentic accountability, an openness to exploring how what we say is taken by other people. Like I can say something, out of my own experience, and it can land in another person very differently. And when, like what you're talking about is actually bringing in lineage here into the conversation, which I think is huge. So when we've got a history that's actually maybe not even known, like what you were describing with Carlos Castaneda, and not even knowing that, that work was brought into different environments related to your group, we have to have a level of humility that when we are in a leadership role, to be able to reality check, to use Steve Hassan's term that I don't know if he originated it or not, but to reality check and say, how did that land with you? So that people can have the opportunity to say, to bring their curiosity and not let their curiosity be something that they're shamed for, or something that is dismissed, or it's not okay,
Yes.
but to actually have curiosity and creativity be the foundation of whatever authentic relationship we're in as a leader.
Right. And that also can come about as we deconstruct this idea of hierarchy and followers and student-teacher relationships, and, to really appreciate and acknowledge individual perspectives and strengths rather than defer to complement and reflect and fill in gaps. And, that I think is the leadership model I want to work with, because I don't fucking have the answers. I'm just fucking figuring it out with everyone else.
Truth is, we all are.
Yeah.
And I so appreciate you saying, yeah, we all are. But you saying that about how what I might say because of my position with I Got Out could land on somebody else. I've already experienced that. Yeah. It sucks. When I trigger somebody by something that I say. And, I think that comes from a projection of authority, which I don't want, or, that's the antithesis of what we're trying to do with the movement, is not have, that I don't want to carry that weight. I don't want to carry that responsibility. I want to do my best at what I'm trying to accomplish, but I can't hold the right answer for everyone, if that makes sense.
And we don't get to decide what, despite our good intentions, impact matters more. We don't get to decide how it should have landed. If somebody experiences something a certain way, and so many of us come from these groups where it's all about taking responsibility and there are no victims and da, 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 da. So it's like there's this sense of, oh, you're just triggered. That's your work to do. It's not my responsibility. And that's, we have to kind of override all of that indoctrination too, and really understand that it's not about good intentions. They're sort of irrelevant in a way, like when you really get down to the nitty gritty of the work. So that's all I wanted to add.
That's the other side of the coin. But, and that I've had that experience of sharing somebody's story, say on social media, and, not giving people a heads up that this shit's triggering, and having people freak out. Like, you should have given a warning, because now I'm sitting in this feeling and I wasn't ready for this. Right. Yeah. And, there's a certain responsibility that I Got Out has to give people a heads up like that. And it's the person's responsibility who's entering into this space to make sure that they're resilient enough and have the support that they need to enter it, because we're dancing on edges. We're talking about stuff that is sometimes hard to deal with,
Yeah. And there is a level of, Candice, I think you used the phrase earlier in our conversation, emotional maturity. That we do have to have a level of strength and capacity to be able to be humble enough to be a real leader in this space. Because there's going to be, there is a lot that comes at us, no matter what. And I think that part of where I got out, I think for me, the foundation stone of I Got Out is by continually keeping the focus back on our individual stories. And that when we can land ourselves in uncovering our own individual stories and finding ways to express our individual stories. That becomes the education, that becomes the salve on the wounds. Yeah. And holy shit, I actually woke up this morning remembering a dream for the first time in about 6 months. And anyone who has read my book knows that the cultic group I was involved in was all about dreams. And in the dream that I had this morning, and I don't need anybody to interpret this for me, thank you very much, because actually I'm like right here with it. In the dream, I was driving a car with several others. In the group that I was a part of, me being in the driver's seat would be, oh, you're in control. And I would be totally criticized and ridiculed for that. So that's a very bad thing.
That's a bad thing.
That would keep me in that cycle of dependence on my ex-teacher to overcome that need to be in control, being in the driver's seat. Fuck that. So in the dream, I'm driving and the power goes out in the car. Like, when the alternator goes, have you ever been in a car where everything just starts to shut down and I see it happening? I actually I know what's happening. And then I see that, there's this little pull off right here. And I'm with my friends and we're going to some cool event. And so it's like, there's the spot. So I just ease into the spot. When I get to that spot, I see, look, there's the path that goes to the place that we were headed to. So this is like perfect. And we get to have a walk to go there instead of like driving up, so it's like all perfect. And then, how dreams are, it shifts and we're at this space that is this environment, like a both indoor and an outdoor space where everybody is engaged in a creative project. So this creativity is just like oozing out of this space. Some people are collaborating, some people are doing individual projects, and it was just so cool. And for me, it's so clear that this dream came out of yesterday having conversations with two incredibly dynamic, creative people. In this case, it happened to be men. I'm mostly around women, so it was especially refreshing to hear the creativity to hear male creativity and, or non-binary creativity, actually. For me, that's the excitement, that there's this spectrum of possibility is so vast. And that when we are able to find our voice through whatever expression we want, whatever resonates for us, that this is, like I said earlier, the foundation of IGOTOUT is supporting people in that way. And it's really what connected me. That's when I fell in love with Lisa, back in October of 2020, was feeling, Lisa, your spark, your deep, deep lived experience and knowing around creativity and how essential it is to this movement. That was some serious glue, super glue.
Yeah. Well, that's when creativity isn't allowed to express, that's the thing that keeps us controllable. I love that dream. And I'm drawn to bring in Geoffrey Wallace's quote in this little segue right here. Geoffrey Wallace is, he worked with us as a collaborator for a while, but he wrote a book during the time that we were interacting. It's called A Voice from Inside. And this quote, I just come back to it again and again and again, because these words speak to what we're missing out on in high control environments and high control spaces. He says, when a thought is repressed based on the thinker's assumption that its presence in awareness is symptomatic of their inherent sinfulness or disapproval by God or anybody that has authority over you. So I'm just going to take that piece. When a thought is coming up and you push it down because you don't think it's going to be approved of, right? Okay. Entire architectures of thought remain unmanifested in consciousness. So do any subsequent architectures derived from them ad infinitum. This presents an astounding opportunity cost when multiplied by the billions of human minds held captive by religious or any other kind of belief systems, and is restricted from reaching their creative potential. I mean, is that not the answer?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's like a 2x4 to the head. Like, that's where we are today in humankind, where we are today.
Like that,
Yes.
that quote for me, if we really contemplate the devastation that occurs when entire, as Geoffrey Wallace says, architectural structures and complexity, like the beauty of the brilliant mind, the beauty of the human capacity to ask questions and make connections, when that is being suppressed, think about how much energy that is, what's being suppressed. And in my mind, I think of the IGOTOUT movement as blowing the lid off that suppression and saying, let your stories rip, let your questions rip, let your thoughts, as wacky as they may appear, if you think it, bring it forward. Let's see what can happen. And I have a gazillion thoughts that go nowhere. And so what? You know, I now am free to just have my thoughts and let them play, let them evaporate, let them actually become expressed in, you know, I mean, I have the extraordinary privilege of being able to let some of them be expressed, and it just blows me away. But think about, everyone can do that. Like, that's what we get to do here, is just bring the questions and the stories forward.
Yeah.
Well, I think it really speaks to the need to culturally redefine creativity. Is even as you were speaking about creativity, I love this quote because I feel like it does that. Like, creativity has sort of been compartmentalized and defined in this really sort of superficial, non-granular way. And like, I think about the organization that I was involved in. Like, we were encouraged to express our creativity, and I'm putting it in quotes. We were movement facilitators, and we were, you know, receiving wisdom from the body, the mind, the emotions, the spirit, and we're infusing it into our class. It was all about creative movement and encouraging that in people. Yet, critical thinking was shut down, which is inherently an essential part of creativity in the way that we can define it, right? Like, what creativity really is, and our ability to question and dismantle things, like our ability to be destructive in terms of the way we think, is what is creative potential. And I think we have to reclaim that and redefine that. And I think back to the piece around the yoga lineages and seeing those problematic threads, and having been in a yoga community where I was taught that I was overly intellectual, that I overthought everything. That's a function of my creativity, my generative, what I bring that's generative to the world. yet it wouldn't have been seen through the lens of creativity. So I just want to name that because I love this quote because it really does. I love it for a lot of reasons. I'm going to have to circle back to it. I just love that it really underscores what creativity really is and that its complexity is a part of it. It's not this simple, like paint by numbers.
Totally.
Or making something pretty. I guess it just always, I was sort of taught to think of it as like a superficial, like making something pretty. You're creative. Ding, love and light.
I love that.
Right.
Yeah, Candice, I love that you identified your intellect and your like what you brought forward in your group, which was criticized and shunned and shut down, but that is a core part, an essential part of the creative process. And we all have different levels of that.
Yes.
Some of us are more movement oriented, some more auditory, some more visual, some more, whatever it is. And the way that you just named that in your experience just really touched me. I just want you to know that I could really feel the impact of that. And I think what a travesty that was squashed and judged and criticized. And what an extraordinary, gift it is. I think that to the world today, that through the deeper pulse, you are bringing that quality, that unique Candice-ness forward, into the world. It's such a beautiful contribution.
Thank you. Well, and that quote really underscores why it's so important for each of us to do that.
There's a great model that was brought to my attention again by Laura Tucker of this idea of coming to a project with whatever our capacity is, with no hierarchical, no, this is better than that or more important. Seth Godin did a project called the Carbon Almanac. He started this project in November of 21. And of course, Seth Godin has a reach. He has he's known. He reached out to his subscribers and said, this Carbon Almanac thing, this is something that I want to do, and I want to do it with everybody who wants to do it with me. And from that first initial invitation, November of 21, his people produced a product that was published, and I received my copy in July of 22. So
lightning speed,
6
lightning
months,
speed
8 months.
For a book. Right.
Lightning speed as far as putting together a book. And his methodology is something that, I've wanted to figure out if it's something that could work for I Got Out. But the idea of it was basically, here we are in this space. He used a platform called Discourse. And, we're going to gather people to do all the specific jobs. And you just pick up your threads at whatever floats your boat. Step into this space. We're doing editing over here. Here's the space where we're doing drawings for this page. Or, if you're a layout person, come over and play with all of this. And there was no, you might do some work in one space and come back, because it's the connection of the people working on it was global. So one person could do some work in America and then have it shifted and morphed by somebody in India, right? So whatever your contribution is, you're just putting it out there and letting it go and letting someone else's creativity build on your own. And that model, however that can work in the I Got Out space, that's good stuff. Yeah. So that's kind of one of the things we need to talk about, how I Got Out is shifting. And when we started IGOTOUT.org, it was about defining the hashtag. and promoting the hashtag movement. And we connected with a lot of the bigwigs in the cultiverse and have, the support of people like Steve Hassan, who's, forefront of cult recovery and education. Yanya Lalich is one of our collaborators. Of course, Sarah Edmondson has been with us from the very beginning because she was kind of who kept my spark going when I reached out to her after watching The Vow before I met Gerette. So, and Rachel Bernstein. And so we've got all of these people that are connected to I Got Out. And amazingly, the hashtag has grown legs of its own. It's being used. People are picking it up beyond what I can influence or Gerette can influence. So it's happening. One of the things that I realized recently, though, is that and this is the thread to the book that I was going to mention, The Chaos Machine, Max Fisher, Chaos Machine. In the very beginning of this thing, it's like, we're going to go viral. We're going to get like as big as Me Too. That was the vision, right?
We just thought it was going to happen overnight. And we were like ready for it to happen overnight. And
Because
we were just,
Right.
we were newbies. We were neophytes. Sure. We didn't know what goes into a movement.
Well, and you sort of never know what that's going to happen
yes,
to, though. You just never know.
And this book, The Chaos Machine, basically lays out how it's very deep, but how algorithms, who created the algorithms, how the algorithms work, what kind of content can go viral. And I listened to this book, and after listening to it, it was like, you know what? I don't want I Got Out to go viral that way. Because what has the chance of being amplified more by the platform algorithms is clickbaity, sensational, controversial stuff. And that's not the direction that we want I Got Out to go, because then we miss the movement. We miss the people.
The relationships.
The relationships, exactly. So like my shift in wanting I Got Out to be everywhere it's changed, where I recognize that people are having these kinds of conversations and asking the kinds of questions that we've been asking today, that you've been asking through the series. It's happening all over the place. The movement is living and breathing. It just might not have always hashtag I Got. So that was a huge letting go for me, to not have to carry, these lofty goals of this is what we're going to create, right? And because of the connections that we've made in the cultiverse, and really the lack of a lot of resources. Like when I got out in 2016, I couldn't find, my husband actually was doing the looking at the time, couldn't find the things that would have helped me. And, so what we're looking at right now with IGOTOUT.org is making this transition to being an organization, a nonprofit organization that can actually do the work in the world that people are expecting of I Got Out as a .org. It's just me and Gerette. And, that's who it's been doing the work of I Got Out for the last 2.5 years. And we have a wonderful collection of people, of collaborators that are moving the concept of the hashtag movement out into the cultiverse. Right? So Gerette is actually leading the charge as we speak into this process of becoming a nonprofit entity that could do the work that people are expecting of it. And that's the fun, pregnant place that we are playing in now.
Indeed. It's in a way, it's the work that people already think that we're doing, but we can't because it's just us. And I have to say, Lisa, it was really exciting to hear you say that about that new awareness of perspective about the, like, not, in a way, not wanting hashtag I got out to go viral in the way that it kind of becomes clickbaity. That feels really affirming to me and really powerful. Powerful in the positive meaning of power, rather than the hindering, controlling quality of power. But it makes me want to, like, it inspires me to continue to lean more into the kind of organic growth of IGOTOUT.org as an entity. And, you know, we had very early on, when we had our very first meeting, where Steve Hassan and Mark Laxer, who was already mentioned, and Lisa and Lisa's husband and I were all in that meeting. And Sarah Edmondson was part of that because she was the spark that got Lisa connected to Steve and Mark Laxer and I. And from those early meetings, I was really gung-ho to create a nonprofit organization because I had actually experienced being in a variety of different organizations where power infiltrated in very unhealthy ways, not only in the cult, but in other environments as well. So for me, it was really important to provide some sort of structure. I was scared that I Got Out would devolve if we didn't have some sort of a structure. And I really have to credit Lisa's husband for being the one who was like, Gerette, let's slow this down a little bit. We don't need to create a nonprofit yet. And that was a very important voice in the decision to trust that I Got Out was going to develop organically and I think develop some authentic legs, you know, some real legs, you know, the kind that can actually hold you up and not just appear to be legs. And I feel like that is actually, that's what we're experiencing now. So it is 2.5 years later, we're at the right point. We have a fiscal sponsor. We are in the process of becoming our own nonprofit entity and organization. And we get to do this with an amazing amount of support. We actually have 2 incredibly gorgeous and very skilled consultants in the nonprofit world who right now are offering us support pro bono.
Right.
Thank you very much. I would like to include them in the show notes if they want to be, because it's very, very helpful to have great experience and support.
Absolutely.
To come back to what you were saying about the early formation and pumping the brakes on providing that framework for I Got Out, one of the things that I think has been also really critical, and we kind of touched on this earlier, but I Got Out is not meant to promote any individual that's part of I Got Out. You know, we might share things as a resource, but it's not, I Got Out is not the publicity arm or a way for other people who are involved to get more visibility. It's really about the individual cult survivors that I Got Out is providing service for, to always bring it back to those people that's we want to represent. And that's something, as I've curated our kind of online presence, that I am always working to reflect people that don't have as much of a platform for their voice. also a really important part of this is to underscore the importance of anonymous activism. So in the beginning of creating this platform, one of my ways that I started to kind of weave this web of connection was to actually search for hashtags that were not IGOTOUT, but like hashtag cult survivor, or hashtag XJW, or hashtag cult. So I follow all of these hashtags, and you can do that on Instagram. Instagram's mostly where IGOTOUT lives because I can't stand TikTok. And I really don't like that format of talking head material content. Twitter is good, but it's so short. So Instagram, Facebook is really lent itself to the sharing of stories because of the way that the platform works. I want to say, for somebody who's just exiting a group and who may have experienced a lot of trauma, talking about it is not the first step. You can't talk about it because oftentimes what you experienced is, so egregious you can't put language to it, right? Or you don't have words. So first thing I did was follow some hashtags and start connecting with people when they're telling their story, when they have found the words to tell their story. And, then I get my language reading other people's content and listening to podcasts like this one and reading the books that, we've mentioned and others. Then as you start to get a little bit more confidence, you might comment on somebody's post and validate their effort of putting words to what you are resonating with, right? Mm-hmm. So somebody who's entering into this space, this is kind of a prescription for how to start kind of getting in here.
How to contribute in a meaningful way. I mean, what you're talking about, Lisa, is getting involved, but you're also talking about something that is it's a foundation stone of IGOTOUT, is that kind of like reading is action. Reading is taking in information. Making a comment, the power of somebody, like even, putting a heart or a little comment or a lengthy comment. It's hugely important.
Right.
Or even I would add a private message. I have a lot of people reaching out to me privately that aren't comfortable commenting on posts or even clicking a like button, yet they know that I'm a safe space. And also my colleague Tracy, who was on the podcast, she gets lots of messages too. So that's another way, if it feels better to comment privately, if you don't want to be visible yet. So, yeah.
Totally. That's a really good to bring in. I know on Facebook and Instagram, you can set up anonymous handles. So that's something that people can do.
Yeah.
And once you set up your own account with an anonymous handle, this is if you don't want to publicly interact, you can then share posts to stories or with a repost app that you can start to build a framework for you to speak to, right? And I will tell you, as a person who has experienced trauma and has offered little bits and pieces of my story, the worst thing that you can do is pour your heart out in a post and have it be received by crickets, and to not have anybody see you. One of the influences that we have really taken a lot from was the troubled teen industry movement, breaking code silence. And I love that I heard on the last episode, you're going to be bringing some of that in. Yes. One of the things that the creators of that movement were just gorgeous with was using the hashtag #ICUSurvivor. That hashtag really encapsulates that gesture of I see you. You know, I hear you.
Yes.
I know what you've been experiencing. It.
It's beautiful.
To me, it's kind of a avatar. You know.
Yeah.
That I see you.
I see you.
So yeah, sharing posts, and then when and if you're ready, you can share your story. This is a progression. There's all of these things that we can do to start becoming literate with the space, to be able to, you know, capture. And I love, Gerette, that you pulled in that part about creativity, because also it could be imagery. It can be a song. It can be all of these things. And IGOTOUT welcomes all of it. I get people sending me images. I get people sending
songs,
stories, and songs. This is very exciting development that we'll get talking to in just a minute.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, that's the purpose of the social media, is to give people a platform where, as we build this community, we get more people that get to see each other. And it's been an interesting thing to watch, you know, people being active with other people's posts and how that validation builds on itself. It's been a really beautiful thing. And I welcome your listeners to go back, scroll backwards in that feed and look at all of those stories and resources that are there, because I'm, you know, my goal in this whole thing was just to reflect, because we're all figuring this stuff out.
Yeah. I recently went to the IGOTOUT hashtag, and that's a place where I found a lot of folks to follow, to shift my feed, you know, to really just be continually fed with different perspectives and stories and people who are educating. And which I would add, as far as, you know, since we already spoke about it in terms of creativity, sort of tangential but connected to this, Lisa, recommended to me a podcast series called Cover Story. And you can help me to summarize it. It's so new to me that I'm
Cover Story was put out by a woman who was harmed in a shamanic circle.
It's all about psychedelics.
Right. Psychedelic.
Right. Yeah. And the vulnerable states that are induced by the appropriation of psychedelic ritual.
I've only listened to about 3 episodes, but there was a moment when, I believe her name is Lily.
Lily K. Ross. When
she says, it was one of those moments where I had to press pause and just let it land, because it really described my experience so well. She said, I'm paraphrasing, one of the ways I survived this was I put my brain on it. And that just landed for me. So one of the ways that we can show up creatively is through learning things and sharing things that are educating. You know, we're sort of pollinating in terms of education. And so when I went to the IGOTOUT hashtag, I found not only stories, I also found resources. And so I sort of packed my feed with this sort of, and it's like our feed really shapes our psychology.
Yes.
You know, just like our community in the real world does. And so I just really wanted to just name that and encourage people to do something similar, to just really find people you resonate with and follow them. And then you can be a part of the movement in terms of how you're just engaging with content online, what you're seeing.
Yeah. And read The Chaos Machine. It'll blow your mind. It'll blow your mind.
Okay.
It's,
I will.
I welcome anyone to read that book. I would love to have a discussion, you know, a discussion group about it, because I mean, when we talk about our echo chambers, which are created by what we engage in social media, and how that's directed by forces other than what we actually control. You know, this is a really important thing as we're moving through this online space, to understand how the machine works.
Ooh, it feels like we just identified like a book for maybe the newly forming board of IGOTOUT to read. I mean, it feels really important what you're saying. It's awesome.
So people can share their stories on their own feed using the hashtag. Are there other ways that they can be a part of the movement in terms of sharing their stories?
Oh, yes. There's lots of ways, and sharing it on your own feed is beautiful. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And just simply using hashtag IGOTOUT. The hashtag becomes the unifier in that way. You can also, on the IGOTOUT.org website, you can go to submit your story. There's a page right now, it's actually called Empowerment, which I think we're going to change that, but right now that's what it's called. And if you go on that page, it kind of gives you a whole bunch of information about how you can write a story, gives you some different ideas on how to approach it, some important things to keep in mind, like, is there a potential negative impact of you telling your story? Is there the potential for you to be harmed or someone you love to be harmed inadvertently? So it is very important that people take these questions seriously before telling their story, even before telling their story on your own feed as well. So really think about it. It's very important. And there's a button on that page, on actually every page of the website, that you can submit your story. And that there's a link there that kind of walks you through the process where you can actually choose your own. If there's an image that resonates for you, you can include that and you can attach your story. It's actually a Google form that you can, get your information in there and submit that. And it can take a little while. It can take anywhere from, a week or so to several months to actually have your story land on the feed. And what I mean by that is that means that Lisa, has processed the story and
hopefully that'll change really
exactly
soon
that's
as
a
we move
big
forward.
That's a big part of what we're needing is for
help,
that to change, to free Lisa up for the other really important work that she has before her. But then your story will actually appear on the stories page of the website, and it can be shared on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. And you get to choose in that form, the submission form, where you want it to go, whether or not your name is included, what your pseudonym is if you're using a pseudonym. All of that is kind of laid out in that form. And I'll just mention briefly, too, that for people who would like a little extra support for writing their statement, there is the class that we've mentioned a couple times already called Writing to Reckon. And about once a month, I offer a free class for people who want to write their IGOTOUT statement. And you can find that on the calendar, which is at the bottom of the homepage of the website. And you can click on that link, sign up to be in a group of anywhere from a couple of people to a maximum of 7 or 8 people. So it's a small group where you can get a little bit of support and have a writing prompt to write your story, to kind of get you started. And I'll say many people write their whole statement just in that hour-and-a-half class. And everybody leaves with at least something that they can carry forward and complete it in their own way. And if you take the class, that doesn't mean that you have to submit it right away. Every step of the way, you get to decide.
Or at all.
Yeah, you get to decide when and how to share your statement. There are 0 requirements on how to do it, what it looks like. Again, creativity and finding your expression is the most important thing.
Yeah, and I want to add, our experiences as cult survivors often span years, if not decades. And we can make one statement that's a broad brushstroke, and that is certainly like unpopping the cork. But there's a whole lot that will come up that needs expression. And you can do it however you want or not at all. It's a journey. It is a journey. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I will tell you from publishing all of these stories is that oftentimes it's really the specificity and those little nuggets that speak volumes.
Yeah, the details.
The details. And it's really interesting. I also want to take a moment to promote Gerette's other work. She not only teaches the free I Got Out class that we offer once a month through I Got Out, but Gerette supports writers in her ongoing classes. And I have found a space to be really welcoming and helpful for me to start digging out those specific stories and to do that in an environment of support. The writing prompts that are offered in her classes often take my writing into directions that I would never have imagined. So, finding a community of writing, if that's your medium, can't encourage people enough to do that.
Thank you. Lisa, would you be willing to share something about this upcoming event that's on the calendar and is going to happen? Let's let the world know.
And the creation of I Got Out, it's been mostly all online. And, certainly a lot of the work that we've done is sprung from the isolation of the pandemic and what that's happened for all of us. And so with the pandemic finally kind of winding down, we are doing an in-person event that is happening in partnership with Tears of Eden in St. Louis. Tears of Eden is hosting what they're calling a retreat con. In other words, a conference that has the feeling of a retreat for survivors of religious abuse. And what she was wanting, her name's Catherine Spearing, who heads up Tears of Eden and the Uncertain podcast. They were already thinking of doing like a cocktail hour. And we were talking and I was like, well, what if we took this idea that I kind of had niggling and made it part of the retreat con, and we would host a story slam, and people can come and see this public event of cult survivors sharing their stories. So we're working on the lineup. Probably by the time this airs, we'll have a good idea of who all is going to be that's in our orbit that will be coming to perform their moth hour, if you're familiar with the moth, stand-up storytelling. There's a possibility, crossing our fingers, that we might be able to have these people that reached out to us who are working on a musical with the working title of #IGotOut. They reached out to us as quartet of people that got out of the same cult who are using this project in conjunction with their university to talk about how creative expression can help heal cultic involvement. And so these four beautiful human beings have sent us some of their work, and they're working on this performance, and hopefully they can be the grand finale. It should be just like stunning.
Yeah.
So that's happening
on October 21st in St. Louis from 5 to 10 p.m. at what's the name of the venue?
The Improv Shop. Yeah, so it's a nightclubby type environment, comedy club, stage performance sort of thing. We're also looking at doing a silent auction in conjunction with that, so we could potentially be showing cult survivor art and having people bid on the art. And ideally, this timing will line up to be basically the IGOTOUT.org nonprofit launch party. So we'll have all kinds of ways for people to get involved and help us get this baby off the ground. Not that we're already kind of flying, but in this other form.
Yeah. Well, of course, anything that I can do to help promote as more details are revealed, I'm happy to share, and especially how they can become a part of helping to support the funding for the nonprofit, because it's a big part of what has to happen in order to really make things, put the grooves in the ground. So I will definitely keep everyone posted on developments around this, because the work that you're doing is so profound. It's been a tremendous benefit to me, and I'm thrilled that more of the listeners out there are going to be exposed to I Got Out stories, and being a part of this larger community has been a balm to my soul. So I can't thank you both enough for all that you do and all that you invest into this work in the different ways that you do it, and that you allow it to have a life of its own and its own expression. And really, you're walking the talk in that way. And that just moves me beyond. So thank you.
What an honor to be with you today. Thank you so much, Candice. Thank you.
And thanks for getting it. It's very validating to see that, that get it. So,
yeah. I got out and I get it. hashtag.
I got out and I get it. That's it. I get
it. Yes. Oh, I just totally fallen in love with you too. And there's so much here. And your generosity with your time today is just such a gift to all of us. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. I want to offer my heartfelt gratitude to Lisa and Gerette for bringing so much of themselves to this conversation, and to the cult recovery community in general. If you'd like to learn more about the I Got Out movement, visit IGOTOUT.org and follow the hashtag IGotOut on your favorite social media platforms. I Got Out welcomes your support on social media and also on their website, where you can make a donation, inquire about volunteer opportunities, or pre-register to attend the Story Slam event in October. And if you're a cult survivor who would like support in writing your own I Got Out statement, consider exploring Gerette's free monthly Writing to Reckon events. I highly recommend the experience, whether you choose to share your story publicly or not. And if you're interested, you can find a link in the show notes. Okay, folks, I'll be back next week with another courageous guest. And until then, I want to thank everyone who's joined the growing community over on Patreon. It is really patrons of the podcast that make this work possible. So I'll keep rolling out bonus episodes over on Patreon. And if you're interested in learning more, head over to patreon.com/The Deeper Pulse. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.